In Defense of Women by H.L. Mencken, Section 8, Women's Suffrage, Part 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. 35. A Mythical Daredevil. The truth is that the picture of male carnality that such women conjure up belongs almost wholly to fable, as I have already observed in dealing with the sophistries of Dr. Eliza Burt Gamble, a parologist on a somewhat higher plane. As they depict him in their fevered treatises on illegitimacy, white slave trading, and ophthalmia neonatorum, the average male adult of the Christian and cultured countries leads a life of gaudy lubricity, rolling magnificently from one liaison to another, and with an almost endless queue of ruined milliners, dancers, chairwomen, parlor maids, and waitresses behind him, all dying of poison and despair. The life of man, as these furiously envious ones see it, is the life of a leading actor in a boulevard revue. He is a polygamous, multigamous, myriadigamous, an insatiable and unconscionable debauchee, a monster of promiscuity, prodigiously unfaithful to his wife and even to his friends' wives, fathomlessly libidinous, and superbly happy. Needless to say, this picture bears no more relation to the facts than a dissertation on major strategy by a military "expert" promoted from dramatic critic. If the chief suffragette scaremongers, I speak without any embarrassing naming of names, were attractive enough to men, to get near enough to men to know enough about them for their purpose, they would paralyze the Dorcas societies with no such cajoling libels. As a matter of sober fact, the average man of our time and race is quite incapable of all these incandescent and intriguing divertissements. He is far more virtuous than they make him out, far less schooled in sin, far less enterprising and ruthless. I do not say, of course, that he is pure in heart, for the chances are that he isn't. What I do say is that, in the overwhelming majority of cases, he is pure in act, and even in the face of temptation. And why? For several main reasons, not to go into minor ones. One is that he lacks the courage. Another is that he lacks the money. Another is that he is fundamentally moral and has a conscience. It takes more sinful initiative than he has in him to plunge into any affair save the most casual and sordid. It takes more ingenuity and intrepidity than he has in himself to carry it off. It takes more money than he can conceal from his consort to finance it. A man may force his actual wife to share the direst poverty, but even the least vampirish woman of the third part demands to be courted in what, considering his station in life, is the grand manner, and the expenses of that grand manner scare all off save a small minority of specialists in deception. So long, indeed, as a wife knows her husband's income accurately, she has a sure means of holding him to his oaths. Even more effective than the fiscal battery is the barrier of poltroonery. The one character that distinguishes man from the other highly vertebrata, indeed, is his excessive timorousness, his easy yielding to alarms, his incapacity for adventure without a crowd behind him. In his normal incarnation he is no more capable of initiating an extra-legal affair, at all events above the mawkish harmlessness of a flirting match with a cigar girl in a cafe, than he is of scaling the battlements of hell. He likes to think of himself doing it, just as he likes to think of himself leading a cavalry charge or climbing the Matterhorn. Often, indeed, his vanity leads him to imagine the thing done, and he admits by winks and blushes that he is a bad one. But at the bottom of all that tawdry pretense there is usually nothing more material than an oafish smirk at some disgusted shop-girl, or a scraping of shins under the table. Let any woman who is disquieted by reports of her husband's derelictions figure to herself how long it would have taken him to propose to her if left to his own enterprise, and let her ask herself if so pusillanimous a creature could be imagined in the role of Don Giovanni. Finally, there is his conscience, the accumulated sediment of ancestral faint-heartedness in countless generations, with vague religious fears and superstitions to leaven and mellow it. What? A conscience? Yes, dear friends, a conscience. That conscience may be imperfect, inept, unintelligent, brumigam. It may be indistinguishable at times from the mere fear that someone may be looking. It may be shot through with hypocrisy, stupidity, play acting. But nevertheless, as consciences go, in Christendom, it is generally entitled to the name, and it is always in action. A man, remember, is not a being in vacuo. He is the fruit and slave of the environment that bathes him. One cannot enter the House of Commons, the United States Senate, or a prison for felons without becoming, in some measure, a rascal. One cannot fall overboard without shipping water. One cannot pass through a modern university without carrying away scars. And, by the same token, one cannot live and have one's being in a modern democratic state, year in and year out, without falling, to some extent at least, under that moral obsession which is the hallmark of the mob man set free. A citizen of such a state, his nose buried in Nietzsche, Man and Superman, and other such advanced literature, may caress himself with the notion that he is an immoralist, that his soul is full of soothing sin, that he has cut himself loose from the revelation of God. But all the while there is a part of him that remains a sound Christian, a moralist, a right-thinking and forward-looking man. And that part, in time of stress, asserts itself. It may not worry him on ordinary occasions. It may not stop him when he swears, or takes a nip of whiskey behind the door, or goes motoring on Sunday. It may even let him alone when he goes to a leg show. But the moment a concrete temptress rises before him, her nose snow-white, her lips rouged, her eyelashes drooping provokingly, the moment such an abandoned wench has at him, and his lack of ready funds begins to conspire with his lack of courage to assault and wobble him, at that precise moment his conscience flares into function, and so finishes his business. First he sees difficulty, then he sees danger, then he sees wrong. The result is that he slinks off in trepidation, and another vampire is baffled of her prey. It is, indeed, the secret scandal of Christendom, at least in the Protestant regions, that most men are faithful to their wives. You will travel a long way before you find a married man who admits that he is, but the facts are the facts, and I am surely not one to flout them. 36. The origin of a delusion. The origin of delusion that the average man is a Leopold II or Augustus the Strong, with the amorous experience of a guinea pig, is not far to seek. It lies in three factors, the which I rehearse briefly. 1. The idiotic vanity of men, leading to their eternal boasting either by open lying or sinister hints. 2. The notions of vice crusaders, nonconformist divines, YMCA secretaries, and other such libidinous poltroons as to what they would do themselves if they had the courage. 3. The ditto of certain suffragettes as to ditto. Here you have the genesis of a generalization that gives the less critical sort of woman a great deal of needless uneasiness and vastly augments the natural conceit of men. Some pornographic old fellow, in the discharge of his duties as director of an anti-vice society, puts in an evening plowing through such books as The Memoirs of Fanny Hill, Casanova's Confessions, The Sine Trichomonas of Gaius Petronius, and 2 Samuel. From this perusal he arises with the conviction that life amid the red lights must be one stupendous whirl of deviltry, that the clerk he sees in Broadway or Piccadilly at night are out for revels that would have caused protest in Sodom and Nineveh, that the average man who chooses hell leads an existence comparable to that of a Mormon bishop, that the world outside the Bible class is packed like a sardine can with brigade salesgirls, that every man who doesn't believe that Jonah swallowed the whale spends his whole leisure leaping through the seventh hoop of the Decalogue. Quote, "If I were not saved and anointed of God," end quote, whispers the vice director into his own ear, quote, "this is what I, the Reverend Dr. Jasper Barebones, would be doing. The late King David did it, he was a human, and hence immoral. The late King Edward VII was not beyond suspicion. The very numeral in his name has its suggestions. Millions of others go the same route, ergo, up guards and at 'em. Bring me the pad of blank warrants. Order out the searchlights and scaling ladders. Swear in 400 more policemen. Let to chase these hellhounds out of Christendom and make the world safe from monogamy, poor working girls, and infant damnation." End quote. Thus the hound of heaven, arguing fallaciously from his own secret aspirations. Where he makes his mistake is in assuming that the unconsecrated, while sharing his longing to debauch and to betray, are free from his other weaknesses, For example, his timidity, his lack of